So our next speakers are going to talk about automation on the journey to FinOps maturity and the path that they have taken. So Alex Costa, who is Program Director and running FinOps at Pros, which is one of the larger public companies that I hadn't heard about before, on quite the journey. And then AJ Nish, who is Head of Product at Turbonomic from IBM. Please welcome them to the stage.
I didn't get a clicker.
I think it's up there. We need the click up here.
Yeah, we'll make our way through the slides. I'm sure someone will.
There you go.
All right, there we go. Cool.
Good morning, everyone.
So, hi, everyone. Really excited to be talking to you. So, really, we're here today to talk about Alex and his team's journey within Pros. So, Alex, if you want to give us a quick intro, what is your team? What is Pros? What do you do?
So Pros is a software company. We are in the software space as a SaaS company, subscription-based model today. We do pricing, and we help companies sell in any platform out there. So we pretty much do AI, machine learning around pricing for travel, B2B, and all different spaces. We're just pretty much helping companies price and sell their products in any e-commerce platform or even on a physical manner using configured price and quote and some other solutions. So that's what we do.
Great.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, over the last couple of years, you've been investing more heavily in cloud, developing your cloud strategy, your FinOps strategy. What are your goals? What are you trying to get to? What is the outcome that your team's looking for?
Let's go back a little bit, right? As I said, we are a software company. We were in that model, a subscription and perpetual license selling model, right? So you sell a license, somebody install that on their server at their location on-prem, and you are charging maintenance on that, right? The company moved from that to a subscription-based model. And as part of that, we moved to the cloud, right? Of course, we had our private cloud, and we went to public cloud at the same time. Now, there are a couple of things that we're trying to do at that time. One was to make sure our product was working on the cloud, right? So coming from a server-based type of deployment to a more microservice type of deployment where you have a multi-tenancy and all that, trying to optimize that. So our engineers were focused on that. And of course, as we did that, we tried to develop tools internally to make sure that we are maintaining costs under control. But that was very decentralized initially, right? Every engineer team kind of had their own methodology or tools or access to different types of information to be able to manage spending on cloud. But of course, also those engineer teams and development teams were more focused on moving the product that we have from that old architecture to a multi-service architecture. So there were two kind of, I would say, conflicting things that were trying to be done at the same time, right? You're trying to make sure that your product can reside in the cloud and be efficient from a performance-based standpoint. And at the same time, you're trying to make sure that that doesn't cost you so much. But yeah, that was the beginning of the journey for us.
Right, and we just saw that in the Google presentation a few minutes ago of, how do you balance speed of innovation with the amount that you have to spend to run your cloud organization? What role does automation play in that for you and your organization?
So for us, as I said, software company, I think a lot of people can relate. You try to develop everything internally, right? All controls in the beginning. It became difficult in a way that we were doing a good job of that, but it became difficult in a way that you have so many changes in the architecture of the product. You are adopting multiple different services. We are an Azure shop. We are one of the top spenders of Azure in Texas, actually. So all that, and the teams are adopting new technologies in Azure. So it becomes a little bit difficult to manage your internal tools when the engineer teams have to focus on developing the solution and using the new technology that's available. So for us, was identifying that we need to partner with someone to be able to be more efficient. At that time, we partnered with Turbonomic. We reviewed a few solutions, and we decided Turbonomic was a solution that fit better for us at the time, and it still is. We worked through, the first thing we tried to actually tackle was to use and leverage reservations in Azure to reduce our costs. It was a low-hanging fruit for us. We already had about 40% of our VM deployment in Azure reserved, and we went to, today we are about 85% reserved. We maintain, utilization was about 96%, we are 99% today. But, it was our first step, right? Our first step was trying to take advantage of reservations. From automation standpoint, we're starting to look at the recommendations from the tool that we decide to use. And as you all know, engineers will be risk adverse. They will say, we're not downsizing this, we're not changing things. So there was a lot of getting those indications, those recommendations, and running through our other tools that we had that we use from monitoring standpoint, from other things to see if those recommendations were applicable. Of course, because we are in a multi-tenancy type of approach and multi-tenant type of deployment, when you do a change here, may impact different products across that we have. So there was a lot of that, working with engineers, having visibility into the data, into the recommendations, and testing in dev environments, in test environments to see how the performance will be impacted before we got to automation, right? Before automating anything, we had to sell and really gain the trust of our engineering teams. And the way to do that was to provide them the data and to provide them the indicators and pretty much test what we were seeing from a recommendation standpoint, how applicable it was, and making sure that they had the trust that the tool was recommending something that was applicable.
Right. Trust, I think, is key. And if you could, when you talk to your organization, do different players feel differently about performance versus cost? How do you get pressure on different sides, especially as you move through this maturity journey of automating? You want to get to a place where you don't need to think about it. The system, the process that you have just automatically keeps everything at the exact level that you need to continue to support your business, so that your business can continue to grow. But, it's very hard to get everyone to buy in and trust that level of automation and that much, relinquishing control to an automated process. What sort of pressures do you feel there?
Yeah, I think for us, right, being a software company, every microservice is a little bit different. So, if you may have VMs that are being leveraged and multi-tenant type of stuff that have specific code embedded within the VM from a CPU utilization and memory utilization standpoint. So the people that are responsible for that may be much more averse to make automated changes, because they'll say, hey, my script's not going to work, or my specific app settings are not going to work, because those need to be changed at the application layer level. Where others, if you have a change of a SKU, may not impact as much. So we really was working with individual teams in understanding what are the requirements to automate those changes. We had to go through a process that was like, okay, now how can we do the first step of getting these changes or these recommendations into a change management process, right? Where things are really coming and being visible to the engineers before change is implemented. So it's about talking with each team and understanding what the concerns are. Of course, we had teams that jump into that really quickly and said, yes, we want to do this, we want to automate these things, because those changes require no downtime. So it's an easy change. Storage is one example, right? Moving tiers, that's something that's not going to shut anything down. When you talk about change the SKU of a VM, is a whole different story. And you might add that additional layer of complication that I said, that you say there's app-specific memory settings or CPU settings that need to be changed. So it's really about working with each individual team and understanding their requirements and being able to come with the data and help them implement a solution that helps with those requirements or that attend those requirements.
So just to play back a little bit of what I heard, as you're trying to get through this journey of adopting FinOps, getting people to understand what they're spending, how that relates to the work that they're doing, all the way to the end of automating the decisions around FinOps. What I heard is a critical piece to that is deep understanding of the actual applications and what they need to perform. If people only care about, keeping costs under control, they can scale everything down. They can, turn everything to, T2 micros and say, hey, you save money, everything's great. then the business collapses and you don't have a job.
Yeah.
So would you say, like, how would you rank visibility and understanding relative to application data driving automation?
So I think if I have to rank, I mean, visibility understanding comes really first,
Yeah.
in a way that it's about not turning things on, right? You can all set budgets by subscription in Azure and say, once you spend this much, everything shuts off. So you'll be able to hit your target if you do that, but your business is not going to work, right? So it's about understanding and have visibility into that and making sure that the teams understand what you're trying to accomplish, right? There's a lot of conversation there. And what help us is that as we progress with that, our leadership saw the value they were bringing in, and they help us with other things, right? They help us motivating teams in different ways to be able to have them engage the FinOps practice, right? So it's about education at the end of the day. I mean, I think a tool will help you a lot, and Turbonomic has helped us a lot get there. But it's if you don't, as I said, if you're not working close to teams to understand what their struggles are, what their concerns are, it's really hard to get to this next step.
Cool. And so we're up for time here, but just one last statement on what's next. If you could pick one thing to move to next in this space, a discussion we're having around aligning to application performance, application data, how would you feel if we shifted to look more at how much am I spending per transaction? How much am I spending per serving each customer versus how much am I spending on this cloud instance versus that cloud instance?
I think you hit the nail on the head, right? As a SaaS provider, what we want to look is our margins and how much money we're making for each specific deployment. There is a path to get there, and in a microservice and multi-tenant deployment, that's really hard, right? You all know that. So now we are working closer to people that are working on margins and some other solutions to make sure that we are aligned. So that's our next step, right? We will work more towards the data that we have today and how we can define cost per application, per customer, per group. And we have done some work around that already, so we are moving into that. But yeah, that's what we're working next.
Cool, great. And with that, I don't know if I should. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, great. JR here from the FinOps Foundation. Thank you for watching. Please go to FinOps.org if you want to get plugged into this amazing community. And of course, hit subscribe right here on YouTube to get all the future content. Hope to see you soon.